So here's a good question. What determines satisfaction? Um, so Usually, when we think about consumer satisfaction, we think about the expectancy disconfirmation model. So, this model basically says satisfaction depends on comparison of pre purchase expectation to actual outcomes. So, the expectations that I had before I bought the product versus the outcome after I buy the product. I mentioned the laptop that I purchased. Again, I wasn't satisfied because my pre purchase expectations did not meet my actual the outcome of the product. Using it was not kind of what I expected it to be. According to the expectancy disconfirmation model, there are three sources of confirmation or disconfirmation. So negative disconfirmation happens when the product delivers less than expected. As you can imagine, under negative disconfirmation, a consumer leaves dissatisfied. Positive disconfirmation happens when the product delivers more than expected. As you can imagine, the consumer walks away with high levels of satisfaction under positive disconfirmation. And then confirmation happens when the product matches expectation. For the average consumer, when the product matches expectations, you're fairly satisfied. So this works out well. So for a retailer, you want to see confirmation, but more importantly, what you'd really like to see is positive disconfirmation. If you look to the chart on the right, what you'll notice are industries and the satisfaction scores associated with those industries. It turns out express delivery services, consumers express a lot of satisfaction with express delivery services like FedEx or UPS. Consumers also say they have a high level of satisfaction for things like full service restaurants, hotels, cell phones. Consumers tend to say they have the least satisfaction with newspapers. This makes sense to me. A lot of people don't read newspapers anymore. Um, you know, they don't read actual newspapers, they get their news online. And it also makes sense considering the fact that, a lot of people have negative things to say about the news. Another industry that's at the bottom of this list are airlines. This also makes sense to me. I could see how people would not be completely happy with airlines. In the news, I've read a couple of articles that talked about passengers having to stay on planes for several hours. And in fact, I think I read a story where a group of passengers were on a plane for 12 hours and they just couldn't take off, but they also couldn't leave the plane. I can't imagine. The third least satisfied industry that brings about the least satisfaction, I guess I should say, is internet social media. This is really interesting to me. And if we were in class, I'd want to talk about this a little bit more. At the end of the day, why are people both committed to using social media and at the same time saying they're dissatisfied with it? So the question becomes, why are consumers dissatisfied? Are they dissatisfied with the actual maneuvering of social media or the actual product itself, or are they dissatisfied with the outcomes, such as jealousy? I talked about Facebook, jealousy, envy, loneliness, these kind of things, or is it the actual social media general experience? Let me know your thoughts. What determines satisfaction? So usually it's determined by your overall feelings or attitudes, your evaluations about a product or service or any market offering after it has been utilized, right? When it comes to product specifically, it could be perceptions of product quality, price, brand name, warranties, advertising, any follow up interactions. I want to stress at this point, though, again, that when we talk about um, satisfaction, we could also look at other market offerings, right? So we could look at services. So although, and I am going to do that in a couple of slides from now, but what determines satisfaction when we think of other market offerings like ideas, right? So what happens when you go to vote and you pick a candidate and then the candidate has to kind of do what they say they will do. One thing that you'll notice among people who support Trump is that a lot of them believe that he has kept his promises, right? And so if you believe that Trump has kept his promises, of course you're going to be satisfied with Trump and you're going to vote for him again, or a lot of people will, I'll say that. Um, on the other hand, there are people who may believe he hasn't kept his promises or they didn't like the promises that were being made to begin with. And so that would be kind of dissatisfying. What if you look at something from the government and it is an advertisement or kind of a brochure or something that talks about walking and, let's say, weight loss, right? So you start seeing ads on TV and little flyers, and someone comes from your job, yada yada yada, and they convince you to start walking, right? What happens when you start walking and you start losing weight? If that was your overall goal. On the other hand, what happens if you start walking and you don't lose weight? What happens if you see a commercial for a television show and you watch the show and, nothing? You hate it, right? I'm trying to think of, oh, well, I don't watch much TV because I can't get past probably the first 15 minutes of a lot of things. But I saw this movie with Will Smith. I Am Legend, I think is what it was. I Am Legend is this the one where he's like in burning infernos, but he's the hero. Anyway, whatever that was, I went with my family to watch this movie. They had hyped it up for me. I hadn't really seen any previews until that morning. So I go to this movie, and I hated it with every fiber of my being. And I actually walked out. I told my family my stomach hurt. I've done that twice now. With that movie, and the other time is when they had me go see a live performance of Is It So You Think You Can Dance? I don't really like dancing. That much, or that type of dancing, I should say. Yeah, so that happened. I also once had a date leave. I made him leave. What's the name of Game of Thrones? Is it Game of Thrones? I can't remember the one of the popular actresses in it. I think it. No, I don't think it was Game of Thrones. What's the other one that's kind of like Game of Thrones, but it's like should stop rambling. I can't remember the name of it, but I'm telling you, I was like, I gotta get out of here. people people in the movies loved it, but I was like, I am gonna lose my mind if I don't get out of here. I am leaving. And my date was like, what? I was like, I am getting up in 2 minutes and walking out. And I actually did it, and so he did it too. It was pretty funny. Okay, so I just looked up that movie. It was Hunger Games. I hadn't read the book, and the book is always better, but I went to see the movie with this guy, and I hated it. I hated it. Eh, I shouldn't call him this guy. He was my partner. But I was like, I gotta go. But the great thing was that when I was like outside of the movie theater and I was like, I hated it, he hated it too. So it worked out really well. All right. Anyway, what else determines satisfaction? Well, if it's all of those things, one thing we have to remember is that we need to manage if you're a marketer, retailer, and or advertiser. And I'm using these things because a lot of times I'm sorry, not retailers, advertisers and marketers are playing the same game because they're the same people. So, P&G will have their own advertising functions, and then they might hire outside people as well. But essentially, they're all working for P&G, right? So maybe I should just use the term marketers because, it falls under the marketing umbrella. Advertising does. All right. So, I would say that these things do illustrate the importance of managing expectations. Usually dissatisfaction, this is very true, is that the expectations that a consumer had exceeded the company's ability to offer or deliver. I have heard people who complain about Amazon deliveries because Amazon says, hey, I'll get it to you in one day, and really it takes 2 or 3. This actually happened to me last year. I went on a trip. I actually went on a trip by myself. I might have mentioned this before in the first day. I went on a trip by myself overseas to London and Paris last year for 3 weeks. And I ordered this bag off Amazon, like a wallet type of thing for security. And they didn't deliver it nearly on time. Like I ordered it 2 weeks before I left, still didn't get it before I left. They said they delivered it to someone else's address. But anyway, if you're a company, you need to kind of know what you can deliver and then advertise and market that. Do not go above and beyond what you can deliver, because that is really a way to kind of get people dissatisfied. So I must mention attribution theory. Attribution theory is the focus of the theory is explaining why certain events have occurred. You can use attribution theory when it comes to pretty much anything. Who are you blaming? Essentially, is the way it works. You can look at attribution theory in terms of relationships with other people. You can look at it in terms of many things, and oftentimes attribution theory is thrown out when you're discussing things like, faults, and kind of dissatisfaction. So, elements of attribution theory: locus, control, and stability. Locus is a judgment on who is responsible for an event. Control, the extent to which the outcome was controllable or not, right? So was it actually in your control? And then stability, the likelihood that an event will occur again. You can see if you look at each one of these pieces of attribution theory or elements that it really fits well when you're talking about retailing, and your consumer experiences with your product. And that's something to really think about if you are a marketer and a manufacturer, right? Oftentimes, again, the manufacturer and the marketer, same group of people. But if you are a marketer and a manufacturer, one thing to remember is that if you are producing band-aids, your front face people are the people who worked at CVS or Walgreens or Walmart or something like this. It's kind of at this point out of your control. Yes, you can put it on the shelf, and yes, you definitely want to make sure that you're a part of the supply line. But how do you make sure that the person who is helping someone pick band-aids or ringing someone up who's buying band-aids is kind of helping your cause? And so that's something to think about, because those are the front face of kind of issues with your product, whether it's satisfaction or dissatisfaction. So dissatisfaction, of course, is related to the element of locus, right? And causality. Who's responsible? If you feel like the retailer is responsible, if you feel like the manufacturer or the marketer is responsible, who essentially are you blaming? One thing to remember is that particular attributions seem to be linked to specific emotions, right? If you believe the failure was controllable by the marketer, the manufacturer, the advertiser, so on and so forth, it might lead to anger, and that in and of itself may influence the type of redress sought by the consumer. So you might, as a consumer, prefer a refund as opposed to an exchange if you're angry, right? Think about that. When you go to a store and something is not right with your product, let's say you're returning it for any reason, if you're angry, oftentimes you want a refund and you're saying, I'm never buying that again, or this product and the people who make it have lied to me. You have all these kind of really angry thoughts. On the other hand, maybe you feel like the failure was uncontrollable, or you're just kind of a chillax kind of person. I don't want to say if you get angry, you're not chillaxed, but maybe you're a chillaxed kind of person, or maybe it's just kind of a chillaxed kind of situation, right? No need to get really upset about it. It just kind of happened. Um, and I can admit that I've had both, right? I've had issues where I get angry because something absolutely does not work correctly, and I'm like, let me just get a refund. So I'll give you an example. I bought something from Best Buy. I bought an external hard drive. I already have two, but I'm really picky about external hard drives. I've had one break with all of my information. Doesn't matter anyway. I won't go into a full story about it. But I bought this external hard drive when it was on sale. I thought it would be great. I think it was like $100 and some. It absolutely did not work. So I'm like, cool, this is fine. I'll just go and exchange it. So I go and exchange it, and it didn't work again. And at this point, they're like, oh, do you want to exchange it? And I'm like, no, I don't want an exchange. Give me my mofo money because we're at the point where this is ridiculous, right? And I blame you. That's what happened. No, I'm kidding. I didn't really blame Best Buy. I absolutely blame the manufacturer, and I won't badmouth them, but yeah. Ooh, so I like this. So this was a survey done, I think in 2003, so it's old, but I would assume we'd see very similar answers. Maybe not, but I would assume. So biggest threats to consumer satisfaction, really high threat, inabilities to speak to a live person about a problem or need. I agree with this. This tends to be problematic to me when I think about customer service and where I get the most frustrated. Poorly trained employees or staff. I'll be honest, I don't really. This sounds terrible. I'm going to say this sounds terrible up front. I'm not sure that I have super high expectations of people who work in stores, right? Unless it's somewhere like Best Buy, because they tell you that the person who works in the store is an expert, so to speak. But I do have higher expectations for people who are on the phone. And I'm trying to think about why that might be true. Um, I guess because when you're on the phone, I would assume that this is your only job. So if I run across someone at, let's say, Target, and I ask them a question, I know that person could be a shelf stalker. They could, work the cash machines, these kind of things. Whereas if you're on the phone, I assume that you're basically an expert on customer service. It also could be, and I think this is probably actually more likely. I normally only do telephone calls with my doctor or some kind of financial service institution. Oh, wait, or my cell phone provider. And in all three of those cases, I just expect these people to be experts. I guess this is my rationale for this. I'd love to hear your rationale for these results. So what increases consumer satisfaction? I'm laughing because the thing that increases consumer satisfaction the most is participating in consumer surveys. I agree with this. I'm not a huge fan of surveys myself. Although if you send me one, I will definitely do it. I don't kind of ignore them usually. I get a lot of surveys from Wayne State actually, which is kind of odd now that I'm thinking about it. Um, what increases consumer satisfaction the most? The ability to customize a particular product or service according to your own preferences. There's someone in class who wanted to do their project on customization. So kind of like what Nike does with shoes, you can customize your shoes. I can't remember what it is they wanted to customize though. Um, I don't know. The number two thing that increases customer satisfaction the most is having a personalized experience with companies you do business with, which is really interesting because if you go to the slide before this one, people say that they don't really need a lot of individual attention. That doesn't decrease satisfaction. So the lack of individual attention doesn't decrease satisfaction, but apparently it does increase consumer satisfaction quite a bit. Maybe it's because of this expectancy, right? Maybe people don't expect it, and so when it's offered, it becomes a huge deal for consumers. So I will mention, I mentioned that I would talk about service. So one big deal in service and service quality perceptions and the kind of sub-discipline of services, which falls under the marketing umbrella as well, is what they call ServQual. So ServQual is this paper that looks at different an academic paper where they flush out by I think they had thousands of consumers that they sent surveys to. I could be wrong, but I think that's true. And the paper is in our reading this week. And they look to see kind of what do people need for them to say that something is a quality service. And they found that there are really kind of five things that work the best. One is reliability, right? So your ability to perform the promised service dependably, accurately, and on time. Oh, let me say this real quick. I put it in the lecture reading. I said this was a big deal in service. One thing you'll notice with a lot of readings this week is that they're a little older, and I apologize for that, but they're really kind of correct for these particular comments and the lecture as a whole. But a lot of them have a really great number of citations, right? 10,000, 6,000. ServQual, what I'm talking about now, has over 36,000 citations. So it's a big deal when it comes to services, and I highly recommend you look at it if you are a service marketer, a services marketer, or if you want to be. So let me just jump back into the dimensions now. The second, assurance, knowledge and courtesy of the employees and their ability to inspire trust and confidence. The tangibles, the appearance of the physical facilities, the equipment, the contact personnel. Empathy. Empathy tends to be huge, believing that the retailer and manufacturer and all these other people, service provider, cares about you, that you're getting individualized attention, so on and so forth. And then responsiveness, willingness to help consumers and provide the requested service promptly. So these are all dimensions of perceived service quality. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I believe that these are dimensions of non-service quality as well. Maybe not every single one of these dimensions, but several of them, right? So when you're talking about buying a product or other market offerings like deciding whether or not to go to college, and what college to go to, those kind of things. When you're visiting campuses or you're on the internet and you're talking to advisors or whatever, empathy is going to be really important. Responsiveness, assurance, reliability, these kind of things are also going to move past just services, frankly. Just like, let me just toot this out, just like a lot of what I talk about with products also will apply to other market offerings like services and, education as a consumption device, as, governmental or non-governmental organizations and what they're marketing, ideas that are being marketed, so on and so forth. So what do you do if you're a consumer and you're dissatisfied? We usually say there are four actions that consumers kind of do when they're acting on um, dissatisfaction. One is to take no action. And I've done this many times, right? I buy a dress. It's not super expensive. I bought it on sale. It doesn't fit. I just put it in my charity bag and donate it at some point. Um, and I do this quite a bit when it comes to lower cost items. I might give it away. I might throw it away. I mean, you just never recycle it, whatever. Discontinue purchasing is another thing that you can do, right? I'll never purchase this again. And I've seen this play out with both new products and older products, right? When you think of formula has changed, so on and so forth. So some people just discontinue purchasing, and that's pretty much the end of the story. You can complain about an item or return an item if you want. When I think about complaints, I remember I usually like these little, if I'm making like a sandwich, I like these little 100-calorie round things that you can buy. And I remember buying some, and it was great. I made a sandwich, and the very next day I would go and look, and they're all moldy. So I was grossed out. So I did complain, right? Like you need to take moldy stuff off the shelves. You can and in that instance, I did return the item. Notice though, when I'm talking about acting on dissatisfaction, I am saying you can complain and or return an item, right? There are times when you complain, but you don't return the item, right? Maybe you got a computer, it's a little slower than you wanted it to be, but you keep it because you can't afford something else, or, because you like a lot of other things about the computer. You could return the item and not have any kind of verbal complaints, right? You could decide I'm not going to talk to them about how much I don't like the product, or I'm not going to talk to anybody else. I'm just going to return the item. And then last but not least, you can spread negative word of mouth, which we'll talk a bit about later. But negative word of mouth has some serious repercussions because people tend to trust their friends and people they know, people they admire and respect, or want to emulate, like celebrities or Instagram models, or someone you follow on Twitter, things like this. And so spreading negative word of mouth can be problematic for retailers and marketers. And so you really want to be on the lookout for negative word of mouth, and understand the ramifications of negative word of mouth. So who complains? When we look at the demographic of complainers, who actually complains the most? Now, I should say up front that there are some discrepancies, right? So there is research that shows that higher income people complain the most. And then there's also research, though, that shows that lower income people complain the most. There's research that shows that older people complain the most, and other research that shows younger people complain the most. Single people, that actually, there's no research that says married people. It usually is single people who complain the most. There's research that shows that males complain the most, and other research that shows that females complain the most. But when we think of things that are just kind of bottom line, single people tend to complain more. People who have a high sense of justice tend to complain more, and then people who have more positive attitudes towards complaining tend to complain more. So people who think, hey, there's nothing wrong with complaining, are more likely to complain, right? Lately, we have seen this meme going around and name calling of Karen, all right? And I think what did they say? Like a middle-aged white woman who is just like a master complainer. We've seen this going around and people taking pictures and videos and so on and so forth. And I'm not exactly sure what the bottom line point of the Karen meme is. I'm wondering if it's maybe to kind of embarrass these people, or if it's just meant to inform people that this happens, or is it just to make fun of people? I'm not sure, but this is something we see now. So there you go. So when they talk about complainers, they typically say there are four types of complainers. The first are called passives. They tend to keep quiet. They don't really complain. They don't really spread negative word of mouth. They feel as if they complain, nothing will happen. So these are people who might make an offhand comment like, "Oh, this is terrible," but then they won't really share that information with other people. They won't complain to the company because they don't think anything's going to happen. So these are the kind of complainers you want. I hate to say that, but it's true. So, if you have a product that's kind of iffy, you want people that are passive. You want people that absolutely won't spread negative word of mouth. They won't go on Amazon.com and review a product that they purchase from Amazon or Walmart or anywhere else. These are the people that you want in your store if you're or in buying your product if your product is kind of iffy. All right, voicers are vociferous, meaning that they actively complain. They're less likely to spread negative word of mouth. They give companies a second chance, and that they actually believing that by complaining, companies can improve, which is interesting, right? So these are people who are complaining with good intentions, right? They want whatever issue that's there to be improved, and this can be really helpful for companies, right? So if you say, I'll give you an example. I have a dermatologist that I see because I had two little dots on my face. And then I wanted some laser hair removal. Neither here nor there. But I have a dermatologist that I see, and I absolutely love her. I think she's amazing. I would totally recommend her. Problem. She has a terrible secretary. Like the person who like sits in the front answers calls is awful. She doesn't always answer the phone. Actually, I've seen her when I'm in the office where she just won't answer the phone at all. She's rude on the phone, like she's rude in person, all these things. So I looked the dermatologist up because she was a referral, right? I look her up online, and every review is like, she's amazing. Her her secretary is not so great, right? So I did not do this, but I would assume if anyone complained about the secretary, they're doing it essentially to get, you know, uh, make it so that the dermatologist's office is even better than it is now, right? Not necessarily malicious complaining, but hey, let's get everything in line with you being amazing, including kind of the service that you give online. And then if that's the case, you're less likely to spread negative word of mouth. So again, I did not complain. And I didn't spread negative word of mouth about this woman, but I assume that kind of people who might have um, are less likely to spread negative word of mouth. Although, clearly there are some people who absolutely did not like the secretary and completely went online to express that. So the irates are even more vociferous, meaning that they're even more likely to complain. They spread high negative word of mouth. They speak to friends and relatives. They don't give the provider a second chance. They switch to the competition. If you have an iffy product, you really don't want these people people to buy it, I guess is what I would tell you. I also want to kind of make a comment so that people know that these things aren't mutually exclusive. You might be an irate when it comes to an expensive product or a product that you had to go out of your way to get, your time, things that you value, that you sacrifice for. You might be very passive if that's not the case, right? If, let's say, only spent $3 on it, so on and so forth. But irates are problematic if you are a retailer or a manufacturer. They don't give you a second chance. They speak to everyone about their negative experience, so on and so forth. I'll give you an example. I was at home once in Kansas City, and we were having dinner, Sunday dinner, and one of my cousins complained about Discover Card, and how much she hated them, yada, yada, yada. So the thing is, I have a Discover Card, and it's a funny story because when I was in college, I got a Discover Card, and at some point I needed after my accident. So after my accident, I wasn't able to work for a while, and I still had some expenses, so I put them on the card. But I was in college, so my expenses were like dirt cheap. And I think it ended up being like $200, right? Keep this in mind, it's $200. I am paying more than the minimum every month, right? I think I'm paying like $50 to get it out. So I pay the first $50 and then I pay the second $50, and my interest is like 12%, which I hate, but whatever. And I get this card in the mail, and I just want to say that I am all about my credit score. I am all about being fiscally responsible, and I have been since birth. I mean, seriously. It is a personality trait. I am about my business when it comes to my money. I don't know about other people, but I know about me. I have a very high credit score. Like, this is very important to me. So anyway, Discover Card sends me this letter, and it says we are going to increase your rate to 25% or like 27%. I was out. I was irate. That's the least. I was very upset. I was going to use another word, but I won't. But okay, I will. I was pissed. So they say you can cancel the card if you don't. They don't explain why. They just do it, right? They tell me I can cancel the card if I don't want to continue to pay the rate, but I would still be responsible for the money owed on the card. So I get on a computer, I write this letter to Discover Card, and it was a long letter, and it was basically like, how dare you? I canceled the card, I paid it off, and at that point in time, I was really upset. years go by, I'm out of college, so on and so forth. They send me a letter with a really good rate, so I got another Discover card. I like Discover. I like their service. I don't actually use the card that much. I don't find it very beneficial compared to my Chase Unlimited card. On the other hand, I do like their savings account. So I want to put it out there. I don't hate Discover Card, but that was a situation in my life where I was absolutely an irate customer. I didn't call and complain to the customer service people because what's the point of that? But I did write a letter. The last group of people are activists. They complain everywhere. So family, friends, third parties, people they don't know, they're on it. Um, some researchers call these people kind of market offering terrorists, right? So they are really trying to terrorize whatever market offering is under consideration, whether it's, a political campaign, whether it's, betting that they bought from J.C. Penney's. They are actively against um, that the anyone buying those products, and they're actively on the lookout to dissuade people. So the last thing I'll say about these people, they feel the consequences are positive. So they feel it's positive if you don't buy, this bedspread. They might feel it's positive if you don't support a candidate or you don't vote. These kind of things. So there are people who are activists, and we live with them every day. You probably know one, right? You probably know one who a person who absolutely hates a product. Heck, you probably are one. I mean, there's a good chance that a few of you actually are activists. So there you go. So one thing to keep in mind is that satisfaction sometimes just is not enough. 65 to 85% of customers who defect to competitors say that they were satisfied or very satisfied, right? So they weren't unhappy, they just went with a different choice. This is me all day. I can be happy with a product and still try a different product when the opportunity arises. Customer retention is key, so you really need to develop these long-term relationships. How do you do that? Well, you can care about your customers. I mentioned earlier, you can empathize with them. You can remember customers between sales. That's why you see kind of these emails, happy birthday, and all these other things. You can build trusting relationships. I think this is key to one of the things that Best Buy did to turn themselves around. Remember, for a while, Best Buy became a showroom for Amazon. People would go to Best Buy, look up the product, and then buy it online elsewhere. They decided to build these trusting relationships using expertise, right? The Geek Squad, so on and so forth, and people who were, Samsung experts or whatever in their stores. Um, and they became, more reliable according to consumers, so on and so forth. You can monitor the delivery process, right? So if there's a service and I would say a product, I would say also any kind of market offering, you should monitor the service, the delivery service. You should be there when needed, so service and repair, and you should provide some level of extra care, so an extra effort. So I'll give you an example. I accidentally left my credit card at a CVS yesterday. Um, and I called my credit card company and they asked me, do I want to hold the card, put it on hold just in case I find it. And I don't, because I've seen articles that say that even if you find it really rapidly, as long as it's been in public and one person has seen it, it can be problematic. So anyway, they tell me that they can bring my card, they can send my card and it will get here in 3 to 5 business days, which normally would be great, except not great. I'm leaving, going home on Sunday to help take care of my aunt who's really ill. And so I need the card before Sunday because my preference is always to put things on credit cards and then pay off the credit card. Um, so I asked, is there any way I could get the card sooner? And they said, sure, we'll expedite the shipping at no charge to you. I thought that that was extra effort, right? I didn't say why I needed it. I just said, is there any way I could get the card faster? And they worked that out for me. So I was appreciative. That said, it's a Chase credit card, and if you know anything about Chase as a company, they have real problems. So, how do companies or marketers increase customer satisfaction? You can use post purchase contact. You see a lot of retailers doing this. They email, they text message you. They monitor satisfaction levels of competitors' customers. I don't know if I mentioned this, but once something happened with my cell phone, I can't remember what it was, and I tweeted Sprint. I sent a tweet to Sprint. Immediately, almost me, I'm telling you, within like 30 seconds, I get a tweet from AT&T that's like, "Why don't you move over here?" It was kind of funny. Um, you can also, as a marketer or company, formulate strategies to attract dissatisfied customers of competitors. Again, like AT&T and T, and their "Why don't you come over here?" You can advertise success of satisfying customers. So one of the things that a lot of companies do is to buy ads to show that they have high levels of customer satisfaction. We rank number one in customer satisfaction, this kind of thing. And consider the customer's role. So consider what the customer does when they go in your store. Consider what the expectation is for the customers, what customers think their expectations are, so on and so forth. So I want to go back to one of these points real quick. So advertise success of satisfying customers. You'll notice that companies tend to do this, except I'm thinking of examples of low cost uh, companies or marketers. So I'm thinking specifically in the grocery industry. I think I read an article a couple weeks back that said Aldi's is now the number one grocery store in terms of customer satisfaction. We know that Trader Joe usually makes it quite high on these lists. And yet you don't see any ads or anything touting the fact that Aldi's is now number one or Trader Joe's is high on the list, because these are low or discount or kind of price conscious stores. And so they're not going to spend money doing that. They're just going to plug their money back into um, actual products and user experience. So Aldi's, for example, if I understand this correctly, has remodeled a lot of their stores to be a bit fancier, this kind of thing. So something to think about. I think it's hard to talk about satisfaction without talking about loyalty. When we talk about kind of loyalty, we can measure it many different ways, right? RFM, retention, longevity, positive word of mouth, so on and so forth. And again, as I mentioned earlier, 65 to 85% of people say, "Hey, I like the product," but they still switched. So you want to know what kind of influences loyalty. So I thought this was pretty interesting. This is from KPMG International, the accounting firm, 2019. Um, and when they ask consumers what keeps them loyal to their favorite product brands, people say 74% of people say quality, 54% of people say pricing. And so I think there's something to be said with that. Do you really want to completely sacrifice quality for pricing? I think the answer is no. Value for money. I think this is actually something that's overlooked. So a lot of people focus on pricing, but I actually, like a lot of people in the survey, really focus on value. Right. So I will complain about something that's $2 if I think it's if it's not worth the $2. Just like I will complain about something that's $600 if I don't think it's worth the value. And when I say complain, I mean complain in my head. Um, Product consistency. This is one of the reasons, frankly, that McDonald's is a key player, right? People love the fact that McDonald's is consistent. Is it amazing? No. Is it consistent? Yes, right? For the most part, McDonald's is pretty consistent. You could argue that maybe the fries aren't always consistent, which I think is fair. But this kind of thing. It's pretty consistent. Customer service, 56%. The shopping experience being easy, and then the selection of product assortment, the selection and product assortment. So when you're thinking about consumer loyalty, these are the kind of things that you really want to pay attention to. These often are drivers of satisfaction, which then, of course, drives loyalty. So, how do consumers dispose of products? I'm not going to go over this, and I don't expect you to go over this. I just think this is a really cool chart that talks about how consumers get rid of products. Something to think about.